Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, 'cause it's root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame, 'cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get To, the baseball podcast from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher.
And welcome to Let's Get To. I am your host, James Christopher, and we have a full episode for you today. We've got folks from all over the country here to talk a little bit about the greatest game ever invented. But it's a show that's really changed because of the events of the day. And it's interesting because the way our show is constructed, we're not supposed to be a breaking news show. We are not supposed to be, because it's really a one-man operation on the production side of it. You know, it's hours of show prep, hours of show post-production that I really can't be on the forefront or try to be somebody that something new happened in baseball, I'm going to go find Let's Get To. It's a cultural view and it's a commentary show at its best, but it has been driven a little bit by the events of the day. For example, we're dropping this show on Friday, August 28th. I think Friday's the 28th because in Corona time, do calendars matter anymore? I don't think they do. But we recorded Andy's Go Astros segment on Wednesday, the 26th, because the games were canceled because Houston and Andy was right in Laura's path. I had an ex-girlfriend named Laura one time. But anyway, this is not my therapy session. So, but the hurricane veered, which is always weird. Like when you're living in Houston, growing up in Houston, you obviously don't want a hurricane, but when you hope that the hurricane veers, it means you're by definition hoping it hits someone else. So we hope that I have very good friends, Patrick Bennett in Lake Charles, for example, who runs the Lake Charles Film Festival. We hope all of you are safe. We hope that everybody got out, and the storm was no joke. It was a Category 5. It's what made all those people on Twitter that were hoping that Houston would get hit again just assholes. So we hope everybody's safe. But the other thing that has changed the sports world is the shooting of Jacob Blake by the Kenosha Police Department. He is apparently paralyzed, and you know it's happened again, and it happens again, and I don't know if it's bad that we aren't shocked anymore. I don't know what the solution is. We're going to try to have a guest on to talk about it today. It's something that I don't, for rightly or wrongly, don't feel like I should be giving in-depth commentary on the situation. The NBA playoffs were postponed. Several baseball games were postponed. Several weren't. Don't know what the right answer is, because on the one hand, in my own world, in my own sort of stress, I want baseball. I also want Americans that aren't white to not feel like they are afraid to be shot by the police for nothing. And so both of those things are at odds. And so we've one of our favorite contributors, we're trying to make sure we can get the schedule lined up today. But, you know, to all the players who felt the need to not play as a sign of solidarity with Black Americans, we completely support and share in that viewpoint. And there were lots of stories of Black players who wanted to not play as a matter of protest, but also wanted their teams to play. And again, I don't want to dive too far into what I think about that. I think that it seems in my situation, if it were me, I would follow the wishes of the player that was saying, you know, and I saw somebody say, well, they still should have not played. And I was like, well, then you're not listening to him. So it's very complicated. But to me, I would have definitely taken the viewpoint from the member of my team and therefore my extended family and what they wanted. What I found just completely sort of off put by was the number of players on teams. Like you had players on teams that were kneeling and then all of the other players knelt with them. And again, I'll remind everybody, you don't get to tell me what I get to think about the kneeling on the flag, because I am a veteran. I have had friends not come home as a direct result of enemy fire. I have myself come close to not coming home as a result of enemy fire. I do not see black football players or black baseball players or basketball players kneeling for the flag as an insult to my brothers who died. And unless you are a veteran, I don't care what you think. See, we all get to have our hypocrisies. Now, if you're a brother of mine, and I mean brother in the sense that you wore green, and it does offend you, I'm not going to tell you how to feel, because again, you have written a check to the American government, pay to the order of my ass, and you get the right to feel whatever you want to. But if you're some right-wing MAGA guy, I'm not interested in what you think about it. I'm not, especially if you're trying to tell me how to feel about it as a veteran. I salute the flag, and I think of my friends who died, and what I wish for this country. And I've said it before, and I can't believe I have to say it again in the same season, that I wish that all of my fellow Americans that aren't white could see the same thing in the flag that I see: opportunity. And we have to have the realization that that flag means something very different. And the fact is, you know, my high school, we did not have very many black students. We had a lot of Hispanic students. I didn't really know a lot of black people until I went to the military. And so here are people that I served with, people that I fought with, people that I bled with, who had a country that doesn't treat them the same as me. And if you don't see the problem in that, then I just can't help you. So I am really tired of people assuming of what people think I should think or feel politically because of the fact that I served the country for 7 years. America is not a completed experiment. Quite frankly, America is an experiment that was never designed to be complete. It is always designed to be a work in progress. It is always designed to, as James Earl Jones says in the speech in Field of Dreams, to erase itself and then redraw itself. And so everything that we deal with is trying to take another step towards that thing that has never really happened on the planet before, where really and truly everybody's seen as being created equal. And I think that we can respect the ideal, but we actually disrespect the ideal if we don't realize that we have to do our best to keep working at it. And so, you know, I realized that the show is going to feel a little disjointed because we recorded some segments before it happened. But, you know, our hearts are absolutely with the players who feel the need to be to protest, to have sat out the games. And hopefully we're going to have a segment on the show today, if we can make it work, where we get to actually dive into that a little bit more. So again, that's our show. It's going to be very packed. I hope you stay with us. I hope everybody is safe. I hope everybody's around loved ones. And I hope that everybody is using these events and these moments in 2020, for as much as we joke about what a bad year it is, as maybe eye-opening to the path forward to make things a little bit better. And, you know, there is a lot of internal political discussions to be had, and this isn't a political show when it doesn't have to be. So we can talk about how I feel about defunding the police at some point. We can talk about how I feel about what that word really means and what we really can and can't do and how it should work. Because I don't think either side has it right, but you know, we're going to do our best to keep everybody sane by being as thoughtful as we can and doing as much baseball talk as we can and doing our best to support the rest of our country as they struggle to get to live the reality that I get to live. So again, we have a really packed show, so stay with us.
Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
So we're actually going to record Go Astros a little bit early because just like the Astros have adjusted their baseball schedule due to a hurricane, we're going to adjust our schedule due to the potential hurricane. Andy, first of all, what is it looking like for Houston and Laura?
Houston should be fine, and I understand why baseball has to be proactive about adjusting the schedule, especially in a season where there's only been 2 days all 30 teams have played on the same day so far this year.
Yeah.
None of that was by design, by the way. Houston's going to miss most of the bad stuff. That's going to unfortunately head over to Beaumont, Jefferson County, Port Arthur, and eastern Louisiana. Houston will get some tropical storm winds, maybe some street flooding, but I don't even think we're going to get that much rain, frankly. But baseball's got to be proactive about making a change to the schedule like that. So I completely understand why they did it. And I'd feel a lot better about it had the Astros bothered to take care of business in the second game yesterday on Tuesday. But since they all slept through that game,
it did feel weird. Let's talk a little bit about that game. First of all, I know that you're dedicated to a shtick, but do we have to keep Joe Biagini around just so he can end up on your next year's Italian dinner? Like what? How does he still have a job?
It's really, really important to commit to the premise, right? So we can't just dump it because we don't like Joe Biagini, or to put it in the parlance, he leaves a bad taste in our mouth.
He does.
See, here's the difference. When I make a joke, I perform after the joke. When Joe Biagini makes a joke, there's no performance tied to that. So he just comes off as a jackass.
I think he should get his therapy puppy that he wants, and it should say DFA on the collar.
Yeah, and, 20 I can't even say it. His ERA is 20.77, and we keep putting him in games.
Dusty mismanaged that. Look, and I think you and I are both above the low-hanging fruit of question the manager, right? Like, but there's a couple things I didn't understand, knowing that you had a doubleheader and knowing that, as we know today, a pitcher warming up is like an outing. Like,
right.
I don't understand Blake Taylor getting one out in the sixth when he's done multiple innings before, and then bringing Presley in, and then being surprised when you have Taylor not effective going into the second game. But I also don't understand, you bring a guy up from Corpus Christi, from Sugarland, he gets 2 outs, pat him on the butt and say, that's your day. And now you've left him with a positive feeling instead of throwing him. Again, Dusty acted like he had 7 more games that day instead of 2 days off when it came to his bullpen.
Yeah, I'm trying to give Dusty Baker the benefit of the doubt, because he is a manager who over his career has proven he's going to win regular season games. He's going to be very competitive in playoff games. I think he was in an unfortunate situation with being basically signed to a 1-year contract, and then that 1 year being truncated to a 60-game season, where normally he would have some time in the framework of 162 games at a full spring training to figure out the team he has and how he wants to use the pieces he has. It can't be understated, and I know the Yankees fans want to whine about how many injuries they've had. It can't be understated how much the team that we thought we were going to have isn't the team we've seen on the field except for maybe 7 games this year. And I think Baker, probably rightfully so, even if it wasn't intentional, before the extension had no real plans to do much other than roll the ball out and see what happened, because why should he? Once they extended him, he started getting, it felt like, a lot more hands-on. And unfortunately, our bullpen needs more than just his hands on it. It needs Stroms. It needs probably 6 more guys. It's certainly a work in progress. It feels a little bit like he is YMCAing the bullpen, where everybody needs a turn every day. And I think you see that with Blake Taylor, who has performed way above expectations this year, making the Jake Marisnick deal seem really, really good in hindsight. But when you're not using your effective relievers, it's a problem. When you continue to go to Joe Biagini, that's a problem, because there are other options. I'm looking here. Brooks Raley has given us more than we could have expected. Presley's been on and off. You lost your closer in Osuna, so that's been a patchwork. You didn't expect to lose Joe Smith for the entire year when he opted out. You kind of could have guessed that Devo was going to suck, because he sucked since the first half of 2018, but he hasn't been available or healthy. And Brad Peacock is somebody who should be taking innings in the bullpen. He hasn't made an appearance in the major leagues yet. So it's a crapshoot, and they are all of a 500 team. Lucky to be only 4 games out, although they'll probably be 5 out by the time we face the A's on Friday.
What do you think? What do you think about the decision to start Bielak? I felt like guy had his first rough outing. Why throwing him out there on short rest made zero sense to me. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's I would have rather seen a bullpen game, frankly, which is what it turned into. Bielak is a guy who had a very, very good start to the season, and the league is now adjusted to him to the point that he, I think, walked 3 guys and gave up 3 hits, which is why you give up 4 runs in an inning. You can't walk that many guys. Ask Josh James if you want to know what happens when you walk that many guys. Bielak's got some good tools. He's got multiple pitches that he can get over for strikes most of the time. But I think that asking a rookie to come in, second game of a doubleheader on short rest is a questionable decision. They obviously didn't feel they had a better candidate for that, which I get. I mean, and honestly, I see the situation that Baker's in too. Do you put Cy Snead in instead? Was the result going to be any better if you did? Do you give Josh James a spot start? Well, if you could, if he didn't have a crippled hip. I need to add him to my list. I keep forgetting. Yeah. Do you bring up Brian Abreu and hope that he lost some weight in Corpus? I mean, I don't know what the options are at this point. Losing Verlander and still not seeing Urquidy has certainly hurt the rotation options. I'm hoping we're going to see Urquidy relatively soon, actually, because I think the league has formed a book on Bielak, and I think Javier, even though he had a really good start against the Angels on Monday, he's starting to show a little bit of people are starting to figure out what I do kind of stuff, although he's got a lot more deception, obviously, than Bielak in his bag of tricks.
Well, and I think when you say that, it doesn't mean that those guys' careers are done. It happens to every single rookie pitcher. We're just relying on them when we shouldn't be. It is
cliche after cliche after cliche on this show sometimes when I start talking, but it truly is. Baseball is a game of adjustments. You can come in and be dominant for 3 starts. We saw that last year, and I'm going to lose the guy's name. It just went out of my head. Corbin Martin came in and was dominant for 2 or 3 starts, and then all of a sudden couldn't get a pitch over. And yes, he was hurt at the end of that, but the major leagues are hugely, hugely difficult. That's why you and I aren't pitching or playing at 49 and 44, but that's a whole different story. You have to come in, and when the league figures out, you have to make the next adjustment. And the ones that do are the ones that have careers, and they keep making adjustments. It's not just, okay, I've made it to this level, I'm good. It's a continual thing. Justin Verlander is 37 years old and still had to adjust his delivery this spring to continue to be as effective as he wanted to be. You would think he's a surefire Hall of Famer, and he makes adjustments every single year, right, and probably several within the framework of a season that we don't ever get to think about.
Or Greinke. Greinke's a great example.
Greinke used to throw 97 miles an hour.
Yeah. And now
I don't think he can drive 97 miles an hour.
Now he throws 54. You know, is there any better example of what you're talking about than all those people who are ready to give up on Kyle Tucker? And, you know, I don't know that Kyle Tucker will ever be a hit for average guy. He has a big hole in his swing, but when he hits the ball, it goes far and fast.
See, this is where Tucker's one of these guys. And yes, I've been frustrated with Tucker. Like everybody else, I'm a little bit impatient. And when you see somebody like Yordan Alvarez come in and have no issues adjusting, you want to assume everybody can do that.
Right.
You forget about Alex Bregman needing basically half a season to adjust to major league pitching. Tucker is a guy, if you look at his professional career, every level he has struggled for the first couple of months of the season, and then he's caught up. He also got a fire hose worth of at-bats in every one of those levels, so he could adjust. In the major leagues, he's gotten whatever Hinch and Baker have decided to give him, which frankly haven't been all that much and all that consistent. And I think what you're seeing is he's finally made that adjustment. He is a guy that was the number 1 prospect in our organization when we were a really well-stocked organization for a reason. He can hit the ball. Yes, he has a huge hole in the swing. Major league pitchers are going to take advantage of that more than minor league pitchers, but I think he's still a guy who's a 275, 25 to 30 home run kind of guy, in the framework of normal season if he's getting regular at-bats, because he has that kind of talent. And I think what you've seen from his this year is when he's playing regularly and he's hitting, his defense is better. I think when he came up 2 years ago for the first time, he pouted a little bit because he wasn't hitting, and he dogged it on defense, frankly. He's the guy who's probably going to be our starting left fielder next year, and frankly should be. I don't see us re-signing Michael Brantley, although I would love to. I see the money being spent elsewhere, and so he's a guy that's going to get playing time, and I think he's taken that step, which is good news for the Astros, because they need position players to start playing, especially ones who can stay healthy, which we don't have a lot of right now.
So, look, we're looking at 30 games to go, halfway through the season.
29.
There's 29 left?
The second
that's
game
right. Yeah, the second
31.
half of the doubleheader began the second half of the season. And look, it's easy to be down on the way that the way the game ended yesterday. But they still took 2 or 3 of the Angels. I think anytime you win series, you got to take the positive.
Right.
What do you feel like your projection is? You think there's a chance they catch the A's, or do you think that they'll be settled, they'll coast nicely into that second spot?
I mean, mathematically, yeah, there's 29 games left to go, and they're 4 games back of the A's. Yes.
7
absolutely.
of them against the A's.
7 of them against the A's. Yes, absolutely, they could catch the A's. The reality is, I think they'll be 5 games back by the time they face them Friday, like I said, because the A's have 2 games against the Rangers, who have all but given up on the year, which they should, because they suck. They have less to look forward to than the Orioles, because they have so much of their payroll tied up in crappy players. Rough Ned. But we don't talk about other teams on
Mike Minor.
Or Rough Ned's brother. And we don't talk about other teams on this show, so we won't do that. But I think 5 games back is going to be a bit of a challenge for this team as it's currently constructed. We still don't know when Bregman's going to be back. Brantley obviously is not completely healthy yet, although he's starting to hit. Springer is hurt again. We've lost our closer. We've lost Verlander, who may or may not come back. I heard he threw 25 pitches and didn't feel bad, so good for him. We've lost Alvarez for a year. We lost Joe Smith for a year. And then you have the mystery of Jose Altuve, who, even though he's only hitting 206, has added 40 points of batting average and about 50 points of OPS in the last week. So it looks like he's starting to get back to normal, but he's dug himself such a huge hole that maybe the law of averages is going to work out. We're going to benefit from him coming back. I just don't see them having the push or the passion this year to catch the A's. It's also a year that probably matters the very least about winning the division, because 16 teams are getting in, and the rest of our division is pretty bad, so we're probably one of those 16 teams.
And, I really think that there's going to be a playoff bubble situation. So at that point, does it even matter? I mean, outside of the ego of wanting to win 4 straight divisions, this, to your point, not even just from a more teams get in, but if we're all playing, in Minute Maid, or all playing in Arlington, I think is what they'll pick for the AL playoffs. Does it even matter other than you get to bat second?
Well, a lot of good things in my life happen in Home Depot. So I look for good things to happen in the Home Depot bubble and the Arlington Stadium. Home field advantage this year is not going to mean a whole lot because you're playing in front of cardboard. It really comes down to the only advantage is having last at bat in more games than you don't. This season is such a crapshoot. I don't even know. You make the playoffs, you take your chances, but it's going to be even more of just random luck than it normally is in the Major League Baseball playoffs.
Well, the only thing I have as we wrap up, as far as the division goes, is, I think eventually Oakland's going to have some of the same injury luck that everybody else has had. I mean, they really have been relatively injury free going forward. Those things have to catch up. I did notice that Mike Fiers found a way to avoid us again.
Well, it could happen to Oakland. I think Oakland has the benefit of being relatively young, and staying healthy for 60 games is a much easier task than staying healthy for 162. If you still gave me a 162-game season, even with what the Astros have had to deal with, I would still say we'd win the division. I just don't think we have enough runway left to catch up to them. And so it's a matter of trying to get as healthy as possible for the playoffs and hoping you get favorable matchups along the way. Oakland's an excellent team, and they are really, really hot, and everybody's doing all the right things. At some point, that luck balances out a little bit, but every year we have a team that seemingly everything goes their way. I mean, frankly, the Astros in 2017 were that team where everything broke right for them. And then it led to a really historic playoff run. So, this could be Oakland's year. Oakland still has to learn how to win a playoff game, which they have not done in quite a while. So that'll be a challenge for them. Houston is probably going to be one of those teams that you hear about that I don't want to play them in a first round playoff matchup. I don't want to play them. I don't want to face them. I hope somebody else eliminates them because it is going to be a very veteran team that knows how to win in tight situations. The interesting thing will be how well does Christian Javier or Brandon Bielak figure into a 3-game series, if they do at all at that point.
I guess last question, not Astros related. You brought it up that A-Rod has apparently been consulting with Luhnow. And the article had the caveat, well, he's not hiring Luhnow. I mean, yet.
Because he doesn't own the team.
He's not, and he's also not allowed to. Luhnow's not allowed to take a job. I think that's right. And I think that everybody kind of, I think you and I joked about Hinch and Springer in New York for next year. Mm-hmm. Is that what you see happening?
Let's put it this way. It would not surprise me. And to your point that you brought up when I mentioned this to you, A-Rod was pretty vocal about how horrible everybody in the Astros organization is and how they're the epitome of evil, even though it's one of the biggest pieces of baseball hypocrisy you're ever going to see in your life, because I think he still has needles stuck in his ass from his playing days. Assuming A-Rod gets approved to buy the team, which we all think he will, it would make sense for him to go to a proven winner and move to a very analytics-driven system, and that's what Luhnow does. Luhnow is a giant asshole. Nobody in baseball likes him, but he is very effective in what he does. And I can absolutely see somebody of A-Rod's status and personality saying, I don't really care what you did. I want you to win. I want somebody who's going to know how to build an organization for me. I don't think Luhnow is going to be a long-timer anywhere. But it makes a lot of sense. And if you're Luhnow and if you're A-Rod and maybe the best manager in the majors is available with no strings attached, why wouldn't you hire A.J. Hinch? That makes sense to me. And Springer loves Hinch. So all that could happen. I still think the Astros make a big play for Springer. I really think it's going to come down to whether or not Springer wants to leave Houston, which he may not. I don't want to pretend to be in his head. But I absolutely see Luhnow having a job in the front office in New York if A-Rod buys that team. And I absolutely see Hinch at least being talked to about the manager job.
Show me the merch. The best from the Pro Shop.
And welcome to another edition of Show Me the Merch, where we take a look at some of our favorite ballpark looks. Generally, we get it from an online store or from the pro shop at an actual ballpark. And we do have some of that for you today. But I want to start with something that we got from AF Custom Shirts. Now, it's 2020. Masks have become a regular part of our ensemble. When this all started, I sort of joked to someone, Darien Sills-Evans, actually, who is likely to be on the show today. We're still efforting him. That's the word in the business when you're trying to lock a guest up, efforting. So we're efforting Darien. Darien, have you ever been efforted? But anyway, he and I have very similar pop cultural sensibilities, and I had told him that, 6 or 7 year old Jim is super excited about the idea that we have to wear masks. And if they were to say, everybody, listen, due to CDC warnings, we all need you to wear capes, I'd be totally into it. So we love, I've been loving the masks. I've been loving the fact that so many baseball teams have had the mask look. And the Astros were lacking one that really was kind of beyond the scope of reason that they didn't come up with this themselves or one of their subsidiary organizations didn't. And I found it at AF Custom Shirts and I wanted to show it off. So those of you who watch the show for even 5 seconds know that I am all about this Rainbow Tequila Sunrise Astros look. I love the fact that it also includes the top of the Astrodome. And if you look at the design of the show, we definitely reference it. Anytime a baseball team puts a jersey out that references that, whether it's the Fayetteville Woodpeckers, the Round Rock Express, or the normal Corn Belters, I am into it. So when I saw this, I was stoked. But then they had another one at AF Custom Shirts that I couldn't wait to grab, and that was another Astrodome one, more simple in design, but it's a top-down view in that Astros Orange Crush look. So all about the shirts from AF Custom Shirts. Now, we did get a couple of other items from some of our favorite minor league baseball clubs to watch. And at first, I'm going to start with the Peoria Chiefs, who were supposed to have their Friends bobblehead night. And this is, of course, Joey with the turkey on his head. And because they couldn't play the game, they let you actually just buy the bobblehead, which I thought was a really cool idea. And we got the Joey bobblehead with the turkey on his head. You got to love that. And then, one of the stories that we're going to talk a little bit more about in the coming weeks have been the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Now, the Rocket City Trash Pandas took the minor league baseball world by storm, about 2 years ago when they released their brand identity pretty early. The brand immediately captured the imagination of everyone in baseball. It's got a certain pop culture reference that is pretty clear if you look at it. And it also really does a great job of capturing the space legacy of the Alabama area. Space is really the purview of Florida, that Alabama area, and then in Houston. Those are the three areas where it really happens. And so they did a great job. But of course, their inaugural season didn't happen. And I think about teams, it's one thing even like the Wind Surge moved to Wichita, didn't happen. Missoula Paddleheads had a great brand redesign, didn't happen. Norwood Sea Unicorns didn't happen. And now the Rocket City Trash Pandas, who had been building up this anticipation based on this great brand, didn't happen. So hopefully they'll get baseball back in 2021, but they came up with their own 2020 Suck shirt, and it simply says 2020 just trash. So we love all these looks from AF Custom Shirts, the Rocket City Trash Pandas, and the Peoria Chiefs. We will make sure that we have links to where to go buy this stuff in the description of the episode and on the episode itself. So check them out, and remember, when you're helping out these organizations, this isn't Fanatics and it isn't FOCO and it isn't these mass conglomerates. These are small businesses trying to make a go of it in an incredibly difficult economic environment. And I think we kind of downplay. In Austin, it's weird because in Austin, we are very small business. Those of you who aren't in Austin, the Keep Austin Weird thing isn't because we used to be a city full of hippies. Keep Austin Weird was always designed or created as a small business initiative to get out and shop and get out and eat. And, Jessica and I don't eat at chains very often at all. McDonald's breakfast is maybe the only one we really kind of patronage, I guess, or go to. Small businesses are the key to keeping our culture alive. And it's going to be harder than ever for them to get back. And truly the last thing that we want is, as COVID continues to wreak havoc through our culture, is to see that culture replaced by large corporations that don't reflect the community or the way of life in the area that they're in. So even if it isn't these three companies, and I hope it is, because I'd like to think that we got them some business, even if it's not them. Check out the Twitter account MiLB Promos. I will link to them in the description of this show. They do a great job of bringing all the sales and specials and promotions from some of these teams into one spot so that you can find them and find a brand that identifies with you or you identify with it. And again, you're helping a small business.
And now, the Big League Chew. An eye on the majors. Brought to you by Zoomer Sport.
All right, so we are back here on the Big League Chew. Scott McIntyre has safely pulled over to the side of the road.
Yeah. Well, so I just filled up the gas tank, so I am in a general store in Corning, Arkansas.
Oh, wow! This is the first time Corning, Arkansas has ever been mentioned anywhere ever. In a year like 2020 where everything's weird, at least we get guy on the internet saying we should trade all our crappy players for Fernando Tatis Jr. The trade deadline's here, brother.
Perfect idea. That's exactly what you should do. Ask what's his name, Mike Ditka, how that worked out for trading Ricky Williams in New Orleans for all of the draft picks. Or if you're on the receiving end of all that, hey, it sounds great because you get rid of Herschel Walker and you get 23 players over the next few years,
and 3 Super Bowls.
It's not. At least it's the epitome of this year, Jim, that the most silly things you hear about the game itself remind you that some things are still normal.
What do you make of this trade deadline? Because it seems like it's a season that, really more so than even just with COVID, could really shut down at any minute.
Yeah. I'll be honest. The trade deadline helps. It makes this year feel like the most normal thing out of the entire year so far, because people are getting silly. You're trying to decide in a much condensed window who's a buyer and who's a seller, right? And there's a lot of teams. Now, this is the weird part because you're only playing 60 games. Teams that look like they were buyers last week now look like sellers, and vice versa as well. So it's you got to have a deadline. August 31st makes the absolute best sense in this scenario. And it's still about trying to win, man. So I get it. I'm all for it.
Do you think you will see blockbuster trades this season, or do you think that because 16 teams make the playoffs, who's really out of it?
I almost wonder if you're going to see some weird stuff happen. So the Mariners, who is it, Taijuan Walker up with the Mariners, he's a guarantee to be traded, I would think. And if I had betting money, I would think he's going to the Braves, because that's a team in desperate need of starting pitching more than anything. I've also seen Trevor Rosenthal looking outstanding and Matt Harvey looking pretty good for a Kansas City Royals team that's not going to make the playoffs. And it's not like Trevor Rosenthal is going to be in the long-term plans of the Royals. So I think there are some big names that are out there. But look, the guys like Tatis, the guys with the Blue Jays, these are the young cornerstones of these teams. I don't see any trades happening there. Teams that need to make the playoffs. I saw the Braves have a 91% chance of making the playoffs, but they have the 26th worst rotation in all of baseball. They got to make a move. They've got to get pitching. So something like that is definitely happening. And I'll be honest, your Stros, even though they're relying on a bunch of young arms, they would not. I would advise them to go find a couple of more pitchers themselves. Just let's be safe with this,
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess as we kind of close this out, then the big name has been Trevor Bauer. The Reds are not playing well, but Trevor Bauer has had 2 seasons in a row where has taken an opportunity to look like just a moron, like his fake drink the beer the other day. Then he promptly gave up 4 runs and lost the ball game. Do you think Trevor Bauer goes? Do you think anybody takes him?
No, I think the Reds are not sellers, despite the record that they may have. The Reds have built up so much for this year. Well, as I say that, they've built up so much for this year. They've got one of 2 decisions to make. The decision I think they'll make is to trust their instincts and go with a carryover to next year, to say, okay, what we've got, we think we can keep this together one more year. We think we can do it then. Conversely, they may say, nope, we shot for this year. This year's gone to hell. We're out the window. I also would not be shocked to see Clevenger moved from the Indians. They've got to get rid of him at some point. They're starting him. When's he due to start? He's due to start. Was it last night, tonight? Anyway, Clevenger's due to start again for the Indians really soon, if he hasn't already by the time this drops. If they show his arm before the deadline, it could be just to remind people he's really good. And yeah, he's a knucklehead and we can't keep him here in Cleveland, but maybe somebody else wants him. So I don't know. It could be an audition for another team. Who knows?
And now to the dugout, featuring Darien Sills Evans.
All right, so we were excited to come back to the dugout, into the dugout with Darien. And, Darien, at the beginning of the episode, I talk a little bit about the protesting and really as it weighs to the flag. And I made a point of saying that I don't know that I'm the guy to weigh in on all of this stuff. I think my job is to listen. And that's why I'm glad you were able to jump on today.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm always happy to be here with you.
So you messaged me this morning and you posed the question of, is sports essentially a reward for a functioning society? And is that society functioning? What are your thoughts just on, I mean, it seems like we're doing this again. We did this 4 months ago and here we are again because nothing changed. I don't know what's supposed to change in 4 months, but nothing did.
Right.
What are your thoughts, I guess, beginning with the NBA and then some of the MLB teams canceling last night's games?
Well, I my thoughts initially kind of go back to when sports heroes and athletes were a lot more socially conscious and also used their platforms to kind of point to issues of social unrest. And, we went through a good 20, 25 years where that wasn't a thing, where athletes were pretty much content to take their money and take their millions and play the game, retire, and disappear. One of the big things about Michael Jordan was that he was so apolitical, and that's why people think that he has so many fans. But, now we've reached the point where, in addition to the pandemic and in addition to the election coming up, this country in particular is just split right down the middle. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of animosity. And when you look at athletics, particularly basketball and football, but especially basketball, because they seem to be at the forefront of trying to use their platform to bring attention to the message. You have a sport that's like 90% African-American men who grew up in neighborhoods that were not necessarily great. They were poor. A lot of these guys were just poor guys. And they still have a connection to that. And it's always interesting when they protested yesterday, or canceled the games, or when they are kneeling during the national anthem. They never seem to strike the right chord for people who don't want to see the protest or don't care about the issues. There's never a way of protest that's acceptable. If you take a knee, then people are like, shut up and keep politics out of sports. If you, find another way to protest. If you cancel the games, yesterday on Twitter, people were like, no one's going to care. You guys are millionaires. You're spoiled babies and that kind of thing. And I don't think anyone really just thinks that, look, LeBron James is LeBron James, but, he has relatives, cousins that are not LeBron James, that are just walking the streets of Cleveland, that are just regular working class black folks. Does he not care about them? Should he just not give a crap about his past because he's, a multimillionaire now? So I think that there's a responsibility that is kind of re-emerging in the African-American athlete that is about kind of pushing forward social change. And that's not to say that white athletes don't do it. There are, and there certainly are white athletes who are allies. And the unfortunate thing is, once they make their voice known that they're allies, they get attacked on social media just as harshly. And, it's kind of weird to see us reliving the civil rights movement, at least a lot of the attitudes of it.
One of the things that my approach on this is always going to be that I think, it is my job to listen. Like you and I have been friends. We're almost at our 2-year anniversary. But, this is an area where my voice doesn't matter as much as yours does. My voice should be here to serve, to help people hear yours. One of the things that I wanted your take on was there was a couple of different instances that I think have been lumped together. And in one instance was the Chicago Cubs, where apparently the team also wanted to not play. And I guess it was John Hayward said, I'm not going to play, but I want y'all to play. And I saw some people online saying, well, they still should have just not played. Isn't that not listening to the person that you should be listening to if they would have just not played? Is my question coming across? I feel like
it is coming across. And it's interesting that you bring up Chicago because, you know, they are really trying to figure out what to do there. I mean, and when I look at posts from my friends from Chicago, you know, a lot of them are kind of worried about what's going to happen to their city. They don't like the protest at all. And I would imagine that a lot of the teams are feeling the same way. I mean, it's a great town, but it's a very divisive town. And, you know, I think that they feel a huge responsibility to the fan base. For lack of a better phrase, I think they feel a huge responsibility to the white fan base to show up. And they can't take, or they feel like they can't take that financial risk in a city like Chicago. Whereas I think the Milwaukee Bucks, because they were so unified, they were like, who cares? And fortunately, Milwaukee kind of stood up with them and was okay with it.
Well, I also think, you know, if we take a step back to, we can see why the NBA is a better organization than the MLB, because it was I think everybody pretty much got in lockstep. That was still in the playoffs. Yeah, we're fine. We'll take the night off. Whereas MLB, you know, the one thing I looked to the Yankees. I was like, okay, well, you are the leader of the MLB. Are you going to lead or not?
Right. And they should have, you know, and the Yankees have had, you know, I mentioned to you in the text before, you know, when they played after 9/11 and when the Mets played after 9/11. I mean, these are significant games, but they were also significant because you look at these teams, especially the Yankees, as a leader in the sport. And if they had taken that kind of stand, you would think that a lot of other teams would have followed suit. But, you know, that's kind of goes back to what we talked about in other episodes. I think MLB has a problem listening. You know, they really want to, I suspect, but they just don't know how to reconcile it with who they feel are the real paying customers of the sport.
Yeah, and I feel like people can say all they want that they're going to boycott, you know, like if they're mad about not playing, but the minute those games come back, they're going to be back.
They come back. Yeah.
They absolutely come back. So it looks like they are going to play the NBA playoffs tonight. I mean, do you feel like where do you fall in on that? I mean, do you see both sides of that, or do you feel like does it take away from last night's protest if you play tonight?
I don't think it takes away from last night's protest. It was pretty big. It was pretty significant, and it shocked a lot of people. I don't think it'll diminish it if they play tonight. There are certainly players that don't want to play tonight still, according to the news. And I don't know if all the teams are even going to do it or if all the players are still going to do it. You know, they might go out there with like a lot of bench guys. Who knows? I think the point is that as long as they keep making a positive, transformative gesture with their platform, I think that's what matters most. And I think the NBA is going to keep doing that. I mean, they were the first league to kind of put Black Lives Matter on the court. And, you know, they are well aware that their product is not only patronized by a large amount of African Americans, but it's created by a large amount of African Americans. And they respect that. And I think they're trying to create a bridge because we know what's interesting about the NBA, the white players in the NBA, as opposed to some other sports, is that the white players in the NBA seem to really get it. You know, they are standing in solidarity with their black teammates. They seem to, like in a uniform fashion, where in baseball, there are tons of guys who are still, you know, talking about not kneeling for the flag and I only kneel for God and all this stuff, you know, on opening day. And
I wonder how much of that too is so many of the white players in the NBA are from like escaping from like Eastern European countries. They're like,
sure.
Let's avoid whatever kind of, you know, let's use free speech when we got it. But no, I get it. And you know, the kneeling from the flag thing, I addressed it in the opening because I feel like it's the one area where I can, because I'm tired of people who don't know me,
Mhm.
don't know my past with
Mhm.
the flag, telling me what it should or shouldn't mean to me.
Right.
I've told you before, I've got buddies who didn't come home, and they didn't come home so people could kneel for the flag.
Yeah. Right.
That is the situation. And what is it going to take? So you mentioned before correctly, I think, that Billy Bob didn't like you kneeling for the flag,
Mhm.
and he doesn't like people who have such a lack of hope that they have nothing to do but protest that invariably is going to turn violence, although some caused by people not part of BLM, for example. But
Oh yeah,
that's,
for sure.
and I would almost say that's probably the majority of it. But there's an anecdote I'd share, but we'll do that offline. But what do you think? Is there any type of protest that Black Americans can make that white Americans will pay attention to and not be offended by? I didn't mean that in the sort of larger
Right.
definitions of those words, because clearly lots of.
I'm not sure there is. I mean, I think people just in general are uncomfortable with people fighting the status quo because there's a part of the opposition that thinks somehow that if you protest the status quo, then what you're really doing is hoping for the extinction of everyone who's against you, and that's not really the case here. It's when King and the SCLC and people were marching silently in the 60s, that was just as offensive to people. When people were sitting at lunch counters, that's just as offensive as people saying Black Lives Matter now. And I don't think there's anything that protesters can do that will make society comfortable. That's the act of protest. And if you're part of the status quo and you enjoy it, or you benefit from it somehow, or you're comfortable in it, anything that kind of comes up against that is going to make you bristle a bit. And even if it's just, my daughter was holding a Black Lives Matter sign a couple months ago, and it wound up on some Instagram for a local BLM organization here. And there were people who were nice people on the block in the neighborhood, but were like, why would you let your daughter do that? Why, that seems provocative for a 10-year-old to do. And it's like, well, once she wanted to do it, it's her sign. It's the most colorful Black Lives Matter sign you ever want to see. It's her thing.
Yeah.
And it's, and for Black kids, I think you grow up, at least the way I did, you grow up with a knowledge of your social responsibility and knowing that when things are unjust, that the safest and the best way to voice your displeasure with it is to protest. I mean, I've been going to protest with my family since I was a little kid in the projects, and I don't think I would change that. And I want my daughter to also know that that's the benefit of being an American citizen. That should be that you can protest and not get shot for it. That you can protest and change things. So
I guess I have two more questions then, and then we'll let you run. I guess, how will you measure change? Like, I'm a history guy. I have I got my fallback degree from film was a degree in history. Boy, I'm really smart when I planned my life out. But, and I think we can look at, I still argue that 1968 felt like a bigger breaking point than where we're at now. We're just aware of it now because of social media, but we could knit that pick if we wanted to, but pick that knit. But my question is, how do you think we can measure change as we move forward?
I think we measure change when change stops being apparent, when change stops being this obvious big thing. We're still a nation that has like first women this, first Black that, first trans this. And it's when it becomes a thing of normalcy, that's the mark of change, we don't think of someone who becomes a news anchor, if they happen to have brown skin, as a revolutionary idea. 30 years ago, it was huge. The first black anchorman, and now it's like, that's an anchorman. he's an anchor. That's what it is. And when that becomes the norm, when things stop becoming special that way, that's when there's been a change, at least in that part of society. Now, Obama being the first black president doesn't count. He was one. It's a huge.
We need to be on the third black president.
We have to be like a third or fourth black president,
right,
before it becomes, I think, a thing, at least in society, where maybe that will change the societal paradigm of education in black communities, or how you respond to black applicants for white collar jobs. It starts with things like that, but like we said, that comes when you have the fourth black president.
Okay, so here's the question where we lose listeners, and I'm fine. Y'all can go. How much do you feel like the Trump presidency has it set stuff back, or has it exposed stuff that's already been there?
It's exposed stuff that's already been there, and whether or not it sets stuff back is debatable. This has always been here, and I think people of color in this country have always known that it's here, and have kind of said that for years, and have been told, you're lying, it's you guys are resisting cops too much, you have weird names on your resume. There's always an excuse for why things aren't working out for black society, instead of just saying, look, guys, you just don't like us around. And that's what systemic racism is. I don't know if Trump being gone will make everything great, will make America great again if he goes. But it will take away his platform and his enabling of people who are bitter and angry and feel like they are missing out because people of color are taking over. And when you put it in a sports context, like the last couple of days, people have been like, I don't want politics in my sports. I don't want politics in my baseball. Baseball's always been political. Always. It always has been. And from the very early days of Doubleday to Jackie Robinson to Sammy Sosa to everything, it's always been political, and I think to not acknowledge that, at least partially, means that you're not really watching the sport, because it's not just entertainment. It's a reflection of America. It's a reflection of society. And that's what makes baseball such a great game, is that you take it apart, it's just us. It's us as America. And what do we have to say about that? And do we want it to be this kind of idealized, pristine thing, or do we want to take a real look at where we're headed, what we're saying, what we're doing, and how we respond to the world that's happening? You could live in a bubble and play in a stadium with no fans and act like Milwaukee isn't burning, or you could say, enough's enough. We can't allow this to go on. And we're not here for just entertainment. And at least I think that's what the NBA said last night, is that we're not here just to please you. We have cards in this poker game.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that does wrap us up. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And before we get to the end of the show, where we finish out our award winners for our 2020 Let's Get To season, I want to clarify something from the opening, because I'm afraid I'm going to offend some people. And I want to make sure that I do so, offend them, but I'm very clear about it. I said and stand by that if you have not served in the military, you have no right to tell someone who did what they should be thinking or what they should do in response to the American flag, and most particularly when it comes to protesting that flag. And look, it works both ways, but right now the tendency seems to be out of the sort of right-wing MAGA crowd that they have the answers as to what the flag means and how I should feel as a serviceman or former serviceman when I see someone exercising a constitutional right to protest it. They think they get to, I can't tell you the number of memes. Don't you agree with this? Well, no, I think you're an idiot. I don't agree with it. I have had the privilege in my past of serving next to people that, at least this current administration, thinks and acts as if they are less than worthy. And the military has done a lot of great things for me. It's done a lot of great things for those people. You know, the joke used to be that it was Republican welfare. And you know, I don't want to get into that whole side of the argument, but the fact is that serving put me on the path I'm on today. I would not be here today if I hadn't done it. I know a lot of people who served knowing they would earn citizenship in this country. Like, the idea of America is strong. But we have to keep working toward perfecting the idea. And that means that we have to, one, make sure that flag means the same to everybody. And the fact that it just doesn't. And I spoke earlier about serving with people who are not seen as equals in this country, but yet they still did more for some of the very, the MAGA people who want to tell me what to think about the flag. They don't think that they are full-on Americans. And they prove that by their actions, even though they actually, again, stood on a post and protected them and their right to believe those things. So yeah, if you were offended by me telling you what you can and cannot do with your thoughts of how I should feel about people kneeling for the flag, I don't care. And I wanted you to specifically know that I don't care. And that if you're a right-wing MAGA guy and you're upset that I am not angry that people kneel, that I'm sorry. And honestly, if you're a super leftist person and you're upset that a veteran might not like the kneeling of the flag, I don't care what you think either, because you haven't walked the walk either. For my own personal belief, and I will let my brothers and sisters who also served have their own, I just wish that they could all see the flag the same way I do. And until that happens, we are going to have protests. We are going to have peaceful exercises of their First Amendment rights. And I know that some of my brothers and sisters that served with me maybe don't like me having that opinion. It's the only way I know how to look at it. We served to bring safety and peace and prosperity around the country, around the world, and we don't even necessarily have it in our own country. And for as much as I think that we are making really steady progress to that end, we're not there yet. And so we need to not shout down peaceful protests as if it's some un-American activity, when it is in fact the most American activity. And if you're going to do it, and if you're going to shout it down, don't put words in my mouth or other people that served mouths. But again, back to our Let's Get To awards. Like we said last episode, we like to recognize the people in the minor league baseball community and in the fan community that we think are setting a good example, that are doing it right. And we sort of do this as the waning down of our regular season. You know, in a few weeks, we'll go down to one episode a week. We won't have two as we start to lose games from Collegiate Summer League and independent baseball. But we want to start with some of our other awards. So we're going to start out with the Slugger Award, which is for our Guest of the Year. And that one goes to Emma Tiedemann. We have an award for our Independent Ball Club of the Year, and that'll be the Joliet Slammers. Our Collegiate Ball Club of the Year will be the Normal Cornbelters. Our General Manager of the Year will be Tyler Stamm of the Sugarland Skeeters. Our Executive of the Year will be the Minor League Baseball Senior Director of Communications, Jeff Lance. Our Athletes of the Year will be AJ Hamilton, Ryan Hernandez, Luke Almendares, and Anthony Silkwood. And then our fan of the year, and it will be the award named after him going forward, will be Don Gillingham. So that is the wrap up of our Let's Get To awards. We will start getting plaques and things sent out to people, certificates for our Twitter followers. But we wanted to make sure that we recognize them. They are doing a great job in their individual fields, and we hope that people follow them and engage with them and continue to celebrate those people. So that does wrap us up for Let's Get To this week. We'll be back next week. We're going to be talking to some more of our championship ball clubs as the season winds down. So hope everybody has a safe weekend. Wrap your family tight, and it's uncertain. If you have kids, do your best to teach them, but also do your best to comfort them and let them know that eventually everything's going to be okay. But so until next week, have a great weekend, and let's get to.